Hey guys, so welcome to the seventh episode, season four of the Teen Whisperer Show. And in this season, we are going to discuss journeys of various podcasters all over the world and how they are doing podcasts, their future goals, and many more. In today's episode, we have a guest who has a music podcast called Bruce Springsteen Podcast, if I'm correct, because he is actually the host of many podcasts. So it's hard for me to find which is he's the perfect one he is in. So we'll take that about later as well in this, in this episode. And so, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Jesse Jackson. So, Mr. Jackson, it's great to have you on my show. And please tell a bit about yourself and your podcasting career so far.
Absolutely, Jeffrey. I am thrilled to be here. I'm looking forward to talking to you, kind of sharing a little bit about my podcast journey, hopefully learning a little bit more about yours. Yes, as you said, my name is Jesse Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I am a 60-year-old guy living in Dallas, Texas. I am married. I have an adult son, and I've been a fan of a lot of different, I've been reading comic books all my life. I love science fiction and Doctor Who, Star Trek. But the thing I think we're going to mostly talk about today is Bruce Springsteen and my podcast. And I've always loved music. I grew up, my parents always played music on the radio. And I've gone through periods where, I love the Beach Boys and Queen and Johnny Cash. But over the years, Bruce Springsteen's music has just kind of touched me and kind of spoken to me. And 5 years this September ago, I started a podcast called Set Lusting Bruce, a Bruce Springsteen podcast. And what I do is I talk to Bruce Springsteen fans from around the world. I've had people from the UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Russia, US, Canada, and they just join me and we sit down and we talk about Bruce's music, how it is affected their life, how it's helped them celebrate their successes, help them to get better with their defeats, how they've fallen in love to it, how they've worked through sickness and even death. And so I just am really passionate, and I think music is important to us. I think music is an important part of everyone's life, and so I just like talking to people about their passions. And as of course, the dog decides, hey, the dog's like, hey, I want to be on the podcast. So yes, sorry.
That's all right. So just listen, because curious, you said, you're a fan of Beach Boys and everything stuff. Have you ever heard of Backstreet Boys?
Absolutely. Great harmony. Wonderful band. Is that one of your favorites?
Of course. Backstreet Boys, Blue, that'll be like four guys like, I don't remember the Duncan James, he will actually be kind of the lead there, and Boyzone and Westlife. So these four guys actually, my favorite guys ever. I think they are just, I'm coming from a place it's actually really rare to hear those kinds of songs because, we only once a week they will just show me the meaning of love of Backstreet Boys. And for that one, I have to wait for a week and it was so frustrating, but still enjoyed just the 3.5 minutes of it. So yeah, I mean, like, what's your favorite? Is your favorite any one of that, like Backstreet Boys or Blue? Any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I love the joy of the Backstreet Boys, their beautiful harmony. They've done a lot of stuff. I know they're fans of a lot of music. They've been on different tribute albums. So yeah, I want to have it your way, or I'm getting the title wrong, right? But just, I love all their harmonies. Absolutely. Great band.
Oh, great. So what's your experience of, just because you said you're actually, I mean, like, not in bad way, just you're 60 years old, so much experienced guy. So what's your thought on music, like, back in those days, like, Backstreet Boys and stuff, and to now, like many people, like, I couldn't recollect right now the exact name because I'm not so attached to that band music right now, but what's your thoughts on that? Like, is there anything like, culture difference, anything like that? What's your thought?
So I think one of the things that is good and bad, Jeffrey. It's like all things. When we move forward, there's pluses and there's minuses. Yeah. When I grew up way back, I graduate. I graduated high school in '77, so my teen years were like the late '60s, early '70s, and back then. And I'm going to sound like an old fart, right? Back in the old days. But, I listened to AM radio. And AM radio played a little bit of everything. You had crossover country hits. You had rock and roll. You had soul. You had rhythm and blues. You had pop. Everything was played in one thing. And so you may hear, Foghat, and then Bad Company, and then Barry Manilow, and then Queen, and then Crystal Gale, and just, different musical all kind of going on. Well, now then, the beauty is we can hear any music we want.
Yeah.
Like if you mention to me saying, hey, Jesse, I really like XYZ band, I can go in there, pull up the screen, Google, find a song, and listen to it free. I can hear it.
Yeah.
Sirius XM, the satellite radio, there is channels for 60s, 70s, 80s. They have a Queen channel, they have a Grateful Dead channel, they have a Springsteen channel, they have heavy metal, they have country, they have classical, show tunes. So if you are into, let's say for your example, you love Backstreet Boys and pop, you could have a channel that's all you listen to.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that's sad because you aren't getting those different diversities. You aren't hearing the different things. You're not hearing Barry White do a song and then followed by, somebody like, Barry White, and then followed by maybe, a Beatles song, followed by, somebody like, Mac Davis. I'm going through all these 70s things, and right now you don't hear. If you're going to listen to Taylor Swift, you listen to Taylor Swift. You don't listen to you aren't hearing these different songs, and I think in a lot of ways that's sad.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cultural thing. I think every country has to go in this shift sometimes, but it just kind of ends up in this. So, what's your opinion on the importance of music when it comes to podcasting? Because I've heard many people put music as kind of like a hook at the start, to drag people all the way along into the podcast. Like, because if you're posting a true crime podcast or, a romance podcast, it's not easy to, just to make the attention of it. So what do you think is the importance of that podcast, music when it comes to podcast?
So one of the things that I find is interesting and is for the longest time, I just would pick a different Bruce Springsteen song to be my introduction. I would play like 30, 45 seconds of the song. And then at the beginning, and I would play 30, 45 seconds of the same song as the ending. Oh. And I had a guest who was a musician, and he said, well, let me write your own theme. Let me write a theme for you. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 3 or 4 years. He wrote me a theme music. And so that was really nice of him. There are podcasts that when I hear that theme music, I immediately smile. I'm in that mood. Where, there's the Shipping Room podcast is a podcast all about romances on TV shows. And they have a song that they play that gets you in the mood. Penn Jillette's Penn Sunday School has him singing his own version of a hymn that gets you in the mood. But, I don't know if you've ever listened to the podcast called We Got This.
No, I actually haven't.
If you listen, and I'm going to do it wrong, Jeffrey, but basically when you play it, it goes, podcasts should have a theme song. No, they shouldn't. Yes, they should. People are just going to skip it. You're right. That's their theme. They play every bit. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you find the right song that gets you in the right mood, it can be incredibly perfect. But the bottom line is, are you I think what makes a podcast successful is, do people like listening to your discussion? Do they do they are you someone that they want to have virtually join them in their car or their living room and hear the conversation? I've been told, and I tell people, Set Lusting Bruce is basically if you were standing in line to go see a Bruce Springsteen concert and you were overhearing two guys or two people talk and you're eavesdropping on the conversation. That's what I hope it feels like, and that's my goal.
Wow, that's great. And how do you actually got the idea that you want to just go with this Bruce Springsteen? Like, there are tons of other people like out there, but did you do any research on like these much of people, or having like big audience or anything like that, or it's just out of interest that came out?
So thank you. The Adam Carolla, the comedian, his wife's name is Lynette Carolla, and she was doing a podcast for a little bit where she interviewed friends of hers, like Phil Rosenthrope, who created Everyone Loves Raymond. And she talked to him just about Bruce Springsteen's music. They didn't talk anything about his Everyone Loves Raymond. They didn't talk about any of his other work. They just talked Bruce Springsteen fandom. And I adored that. There's also a film called Bruce Springsteen and I, where a filmmaker had people record their thoughts on Bruce Springsteen, and they interviewed people about their fandom, and they put it together in a film. And so those two things kind of taught me, well, because I love Bruce and his music has meant so much to me, let me see if I can find other fans to talk to. And so almost 5 years later, and 400 episodes, I keep finding people who want to share their story.
Wow, how do you find those people anyway? I mean, like, it's not easy to find that one particular person's fans. Yeah, like, if he's a big guy, it's obviously easy to find. But is it like, is there no rush? Like 400 episodes for 5 years. Is it like, how is it possible? Do you keep that same vibe? Like, didn't you ever get bored?
Well, so I don't get bored. Because I genuinely love talking to people and I enjoy hearing their story. I do a lot of work. I am, for about 1 year in my career, I sold life insurance. I was an insurance agent. And the joke is, if you're an insurance agent, you're always prospecting.
Yeah.
You're always
Always
looking
sales.
for someone else to talk to. Always in sales, right?
Yeah.
Well, I am always looking for guests. If you follow me on Twitter, at least once a week, you will see me send out a Twitter account saying, a tweet saying, hey, are you passionate about Bruce Springsteen? Do you love music? Do you want to talk? Always looking for guests on Set Lusting Bruce. If I talk to someone and they mention they have a real good friend who loves Bruce, I'll say, oh, please have them reach out to me so they can join me on the show. I do. I go on Facebook pages like where we connected. Where find a guest to be a guest. Where I go, hey, are you passionate about music? Do you want to do? I have a fear, Jeffrey, that I'm going to run out of guests. So I have I have currently about 5 or 6 guests scheduled in advance. And I have about 3 or 4 episodes already recorded. So just worried that I'm going to run a point where no one wants to talk to me, and what am I going to do? So I end up getting such a backlog that over the summer I've been doing 2 episodes a week, just because I don't think it's fair that if I talk to you in 1st of June and I don't end up releasing it till August. So I've been doing 2 episodes a week for that. But yes, I am always worried about that, and I'm always In fact, I'm telling you right now, your listeners, if you love Bruce Springsteen, or if you love anyone, let's say like you love Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
Let's have you on the show to talk about that. Let's say you love Led Zeppelin, or the Temptations, or Jimi Hendrix, or let me know. I just had a guy on a couple weeks ago that was a big Kurt Cobain and Nirvana fan, and he shared about how that music helped him get through his own addictions.
Wow. That's, and yeah, it's the funny thing is that we have a saying in when it comes to in India, most of the times, the broken-hearted guys, whenever they hear a song, it will be like the scripts, like the lyrics are exactly written for them. That's how it works.
Yes.
Every single time when you hear that,
Absolutely.
it will be like only for you.
No, it's true.
Yeah, and it's the funniest thing. And how do you actually get them to talk about the personal stuff, like you said, from personal and everything, like how they get over addiction and everything? Do they open up so easily when it comes to music like that?
I don't know. I think part of it is I actually I do care about them, and I think I give my guest a feeling of safety,
Yeah.
and of friendship, and then I tell them beforehand. I go, okay, like if you were joining on my podcast, I'd say, okay, Jeffrey, I don't do a lot of edits, so you're going to hear all the so's, and I said, but if you say something you wish you had not said, I will go back and take that away.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. They feel a little bit. The other thing is, I think for some reason, and it's just I'm lucky. I have a gift that people like talking to me, and
Well, no,
so
no
and
surprise
they
on
will
that. Yeah.
share. Yeah, and I'm always honored when someone opens up. I had a guest who was specifically fighting depression, and we started talking about their battle and sharing, and and I just try to give them words of encouragement. And I think by sharing that much of ourselves, not only does it make a good podcast, but it's healing for both the listener and the person telling the story.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I don't know, music is sort of another different world when it comes to podcasting or any of the stuff. And
Yes.
it can just drive into deep, because in the morning I was recording a podcast with the stand-up comedian, and the way that he expressed his emotions, like what he has done in the past and how he overcome that, and it changed my whole perspective when it comes to comedians, because we always say that they always have this energy, enthusiastic, and it will be like just like them. They will always be happy, and they're not. They actually suffer a lot, and it's not easy to show them on stage and stuff. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, so coming on to this, there's another question I want to ask you is that, so hosting of multiple shows, you are doing like many shows, and I have seen many people comment on the post saying that my co-host is not actually working like properly and consistent and all and everything. So what are the required talents or skills that is required when it comes to co-hosting and everything and stuff?
So one of the things, I have a co-host on my Doctor Who podcast, a guy named Charles Skaggs. We had been friends beforehand. He had always been a big Doctor Who fan, longer than I have. And so when Rob Southgate, who owns our media, Southgate Media Group is who my podcast is part of, when he reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to do a Doctor Who podcast? I immediately thought of Charles. And so we've been doing that probably 4 or 5 years. And we truly are friends. And so we get together, and each of us do. There were times when I drove the agenda and did more of the heavy lifting. Lately, for the past 3 or 4 years, he's been more comfortable doing that. So like he comes up with the topics and we're going to discuss, and we share back and forth. So that's part of it. I sometimes wish I had a co-host for Set Lusting Bruce, because it would be nice sometimes to, have someone else to discuss.
Yeah.
But the format tends to be just one-on-one, and sharing with it, so that it works well for this. But with my other podcast, like Bruce, I do Next Stop Everywhere, is the Doctor Who podcast. I do a Fandom Zone, which is where we talk about comic book TV shows. Currently, we're covering Stargirl, the CW show. So we do that. And then I do a podcast with a bunch of my buddies called How Many, which is just an excuse for 4 or 5 of my friends. We all get together and we basically just talk about silly subjects and record it and put it out, and we may have 50 people listen to it, but we have fun recording it, so we don't care.
Yeah, I think that's what matters, because until like you are happy, I think your audience might become happy as well, I think so. Yeah. And
yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah, you're mentioning about Stargirl in CW. You guys didn't do like Arrow or Flash, anything like that?
No. We've done some of them. We did Watchmen when HBO was doing Watchmen. We did an episode every week for Covered That. We did a season when Amazon had The Boys, which was based on a comic book. We did a episode on that. We just kind of pick and choose which ones we're going to do. Our podcast network has several podcasts that are doing. They cover the Flash every week. They cover Green Arrow every week. They cover Black Lightning and Marvel Comics and DC Comics and Batman and Gotham. So all of them. So we just kind of do this kind of for us, just if we're really passionate about a show, we'll share and talk about it.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So just the next thing I want to ask is that the patrons that you guys are doing, I actually saw in your Reddit post that you were doing like that, and it's very interesting because as a podcasting goes, there are many ways to, of course, like get money from podcasting, like sponsorships, affiliate links, and everything and stuff. So why Patreon? Like, what's the advantage of that? And it's not easy to to pay someone like to do that and to give them extra stuff. So what's your take on that? How do you actually do that?
So the first 3 or 4 years, I did not do anything at all, and a couple of other podcasts were doing a Patreon page, and so I decided that I would do this, and my wife asked, like, okay, are you going to be hurt if no one signs up to support you? And I said, no, first off, I don't expect anyone to sign up. Yeah. But if they could, to help pay for some of the expenses, like, excuse me, I pay, I pay for Rob does our network, so he pays all the hosting fees and everything. So I give him a percentage of what I get on my Patreon page. And then when I needed to buy a new headset, when I needed getting a Skype number, or when I need to pay for Zoom, this helps pay for it. I have not been, how do I put this, Jeffrey? I have been more successful than I thought I would be. Wow. At the same time, not very successful at all. I have 7 patrons, but each of those 7 are incredibly supportive. They give anywhere from $1 a month to a couple of them do $10 a month. And, it's up until recently, I've let the money sit there in case when I needed something big. Yeah. I just feel like they're sharing their love. I don't, like, there's a podcast called A History of Rock and Roll in 500 Songs, a guy by Andrew Hickey, great guy, really, really a wonderful podcast. And he is literally doing that. He is telling the history of rock and roll one song every week. And he does a bonus episode every week, a little 10-minute discussion of a song. And so if you're a Patreon member, you get an extra episode. So I thought, that'd be a great idea, Jeffrey, right? I'll do a bonus episode. The problem is I just ran out of, what would happen is I'd have a really good discussion and I'm like, I don't want to just say that for my patrons. I want everyone to hear this because it was so good. So, so I ended up, so I think the answer is, yes, I am thrilled with the amount of support I have. I would love more, absolutely, but I just appreciate the ones who are there for me, now.
Yeah, that's great because as podcasting goes, my one of my goals was always like if someone could DM me asking that like how do I start my podcast, then maybe like
Yes.
50% I kind of win the game of podcasting. That's one of my goals, and it happened. Like that's one of the things that it actually happened, and some people asked
Yeah.
me to review it. Some people asked me like how to do everything and stuff. So like interviewing like 50 guests, about podcasting and everything and stuff. I think I kind of learned from interviewing guests itself. I think so. So yeah, I think that's also good. So
Mhm.
this is something that I also want to out of the box question. So who was the last person that you made smile today?
So I did discuss, I was telling you before we hit record, I did do a podcast this morning with a wonderful Alice Ashcroft. She is a singer-songwriter from the UK, and we talked. We make that smile. My day job is customer service. I run a
Oh.
customer service team, and I hope that I've made my team, as we are very busy this summer, at least I've made a couple of them feel um, appreciated and made them smile. So I think that would be my team. And then on the podcast this morning, I had just a great guest, and we had a good time.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So a couple of people, I guess, yeah, that's a good thing to do. Okay, so now you can drink extra water because I'm going to do one rapid fire round. Like I will ask
Okay,
you like 6 questions, and you can just answer in one or two points,
sure,
and
absolutely.
it'll be like relating to podcast and kind of life, kind of funny stuff. So yeah, you can love
Okay.
that. So the first thing is, what do you like about podcast?
I love talking to different people and sharing their stories, hearing their stories.
Awesome. What do you don't like about the podcast?
I don't like sometimes where um, the the scheduling part of it,
Hmm.
right? Like having to make sure you've got someone scheduled, reminding them,
Yeah.
and then they forget. That can be difficult at times.
Okay. So what are the problems that you're actually facing in podcasting other than what you've said so far?
Um, I'd like to get more listeners. I
Ah.
have a loyal listener base, but I would like more people. I think some of the stories I'm sharing are pretty important and interesting, and I would like more listeners, but I haven't figured out a way to broaden my listener base. And maybe it's unfair. Maybe, Jeffrey, the idea there isn't that many people that want to listen to people talk to stories about musicians, but that is one of the things I want to figure out how to do.
Well, I definitely hope that God will definitely make that, can definitely go
Thank
out.
you.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So, next question is that if you have never done a podcast for this 5 years, what else you would have done?
If I had not been podcasting for the past
Mhm.
5 years, I don't know if I would have been. I don't. I think. Um, I don't know if I would have done anything else creative. I'm not a big poetry writer. I'm not a big writer. Period. Like I try to keep a blog on my
Mhm.
website. I'm really not very good at it. I think I would have spent a little more time reading, a little more time consuming entertainment than actually, hopefully,
Creating it.
producing
Yeah.
entertainment. Yes, yes.
Oh, that's great. So, final question is that now, if in case you want to get out of this interview, like we are doing it right now, if you want to get out of it saying an excuse, what would that be?
Oh, if I told you I needed to get out the interview right
Yeah.
away,
What your excuse would
I,
be?
I would probably tell you I need a bio break. So, oh, got to buy. As we're watching on video, so I've been drinking. So I'd go, oh, sorry, it's going right through me. I got to have a bio break.
Well, it's so funny because in the morning, guest I asked him. He said that as he's a stand-up comedy himself, he said that I'm having diarrhea. I would definitely go to the
Oh,
toilet. He was actually said that Emily. It's weird what people are saying to this, and sometimes I have to be careful because I don't know whether it's true or not. So I have to be
yes,
careful
it's
for that.
true. Yeah. What every once in a while, Jeffrey, I have someone come on
Mhm.
that for some reason it's just it's not a very good interview.
Yeah.
And I always blame it on me. I always go that I've somehow not been able to get their passion across the board. And so people always ask me, like, how long is the podcast going to be? And I go, it depends. Depends on how many stories you tell, how many stories I tell. Do we go off on tangents? When it is not clicking, I try to pump it as much as I can, but then reach the point where and it may only be a 30 or 40-minute podcast versus an hour or an hour and 10, like when usually mine go.
And how do you know that? Actually, it's interesting because I've always wanted to know, because for as long as I've interviewed people, I've never actually encountered, at least on my conscience, I haven't encountered, I don't know, on the guest side. So maybe most of the times it goes for like 45 minutes to an hour long. So how do you actually find out that the vibe doesn't set right when it starts or in the middle? When do you actually know that?
So I think it depends. And this is so simple, Jeffrey, but if I'm having fun, I assume that my listener is having fun. If I'm engaged in the conversation, if I'm enjoying the discussion, then I think they are. Like for this, I think you've asked really good questions, and I hope I've given good answers, but I think we've had an interesting discussion. So and then I have an agenda. Every podcast I have now, it's usually the same agenda. I have about 6 or 7 topics I'm going to cover. We usually cover growing up, what kind of music you listened to as a kid, what kind of music did you listen to in high school, when did you first discover Bruce, or if it's not Bruce, like when did you first discover the Back Boys, what about him made you listen, have you ever seen him live, if so, how many times, and then we talk about specific songs, and then one of the questions I ask is there a song that you haven't heard Bruce perform live that you wish you would, and then I always end with the Mary question. And the Mary question is, this Bruce Springsteen has a song called Thunder Road. And in the song ends, now Mary climb in. There's, this town full of losers, we're pulling out of here to win. But the song doesn't say whether she gets in the car. The song ends with him asking her to get in the car. And so I always ask my guests, does Mary get in the car? And it's been a nice way to end the podcast because all of them have different opinions and impressions. And I tell them beforehand, I go, okay, even if you aren't familiar with Bruce Springsteen, go listen to Thunder Road, read the lyrics, and then I'm going to ask you the question, does Mary get in the car? And then we'll have a discussion.
Did she actually get in the car? Just asking.
So do you remember, I don't know, maybe if you remember, The Princess and the Tiger was a short story. I don't know if you've ever read the short story.
No, I think I remember.
Okay, so the premise of the story, and this is a famous short story, is a young commoner fell in love with a beautiful princess. Okay, and the king found out that they were in love, and he arrests the young man, and he sentences him to go, and there are 2 doors. There, one of them has a lady, a beautiful lady. The other one has a tiger. If you open the door, the tiger will kill you. If you open the door of the lady, you will have to be married. You will go marry and live her life. The princess knows which door is what is behind which door. So the young man looks to the princess, and she gestures which door he should open. Wow. Now, the story makes the point she is a very, very jealous person. And she is a very possessive person. So the story is, and the story doesn't give the answer, when he opens the door, does he see the lady or the tiger? And the story doesn't give you an answer. Wow. The Thunder Road is, I can tell you what I think happens. What I think is, yes, I do think Mary gets in the car. I think Mary is afraid, but she's willing to take a chance. She jumps on and she takes a decision and she shoots this. But there are plenty of other people that go, no, Mary doesn't get in the car. There's a lyrics in the Thunder Road that says, have a little faith, there's magic in the night. You ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right. So they're like, hey, he doesn't even call her a beauty.
Yeah.
He says, well, you're not beautiful, but hey, you're all right. You'll do. Of course she doesn't get in the car. She needs to find a man who thinks she's beautiful. So the beauty of the question is there is no right answer. There is just what you think.
Yeah, wow. And not just two observations from his side. If I was the man who was about to choose what the door is, I would definitely back off. I don't want the princess. I don't want the tiger. I would back up
right.
and go to
like, I'm just going either way. Like, oh, I'm sorry. I won't date your daughter anymore.
Yeah.
Please banish me from the kingdom. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the next is that, I think some of the girls, I think they probably don't want to praise, get praised so much. Some people just like getting teased rather than just praising. So yeah, I think in that perspective, Mary might have gotten them car. And wow. Yeah, I think so. Just two things I want to ask you is that one is for just more for my my audience is that some people are youngsters and mostly they are female. So I don't know how it actually came, because if I see my stats, many listeners are actually female rather than male itself. So what do you want to tell those people? Is there a song, in this quarantine time, they are so distant, they're so apart. So if they have a relationship or they are in a couple, what song would they actually, bring them back to that spirit, this love and affection and everything? What song would you suggest?
So there are a couple of songs that I share. People who I get asked all the time, so what's your favorite Bruce Springsteen song? And that's hard to pick. So I have a couple. One is his song Land of Hope and Dream.
Okay.
And it is, if I had to pick one song, I would probably pick that as my favorite song. Grab your ticket and your suitcase. Thunder's rolling down the tracks. You don't know where you're going now, but you know you won't be back. Darling, if you're weary, lay your head upon my chest. We'll take what we can carry and we'll leave the rest. Big wheels roll through fields where sunlight streams. Meet me in a land of hope and dreams. So that would be one of the songs. The other song is Better Days. I won't quote the lyrics from that one, but the song is about that, is the idea that we should enjoy the journey, that too many people say, well, when I get the kids out of college, then I'll have fun. Yeah. When I get that promotion, then I'll be, then I'll be good. The other song that I strongly recommend that I've listened to a lot during this times is We Are Each Other's Angels. Sarah Hickman is not the writer, she is the singer. And the lyrics go, sometimes you will stumble, sometimes you might fall down, sometimes you will get lonely with all these people around. You might shiver when the wind blows, you might get blown away, you might even lose your colors, but don't you ever lose your faith. We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going, and we show each other signs.
I think I'm going to cry.
Thank you, sir. That's very sweet of you to say.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of like I don't know, I had one college romance ever in my life so far, because I'm just just an undergraduate and postgraduate.
Yeah.
And the songs, it's the only thing that actually kept my mind stable so far.
Absolutely.
I seriously don't know what I would do without it, but it may also screw up my mind sometimes. But I don't know. But 90% of the time, I think it's just actually kind of keeps me sane. So yeah, that's great. And thanks for reading out the lyrics. I think my audience is going to love it. Someone's going to.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say.
Definitely
I appreciate that, Jeffrey. Thank you.
So one final question before closing is that
Sure.
what do you actually give as the best tip in the whole world if someone is starting out a music podcast out there, someone who's talking about it? What would the best tip that you give as for 5 years of podcasting?
So the first thing, any podcast, whether it's a music, sports, television, comedy, drama, is you've got to love your subject. You understand that a friend of mine, Terry Smith, does a podcast, Music Talk, which is where you pick a song from every decade you've been alive and you share that song. He attended a master class in podcasting, and they said that most podcasts don't last past 7 episodes, and very seldom of them go over a year. And most of it is because they run out of content.
Yeah.
They run out of things to talk about. So if you're going to do a podcast, you definitely should have a subject that what I say is, if you and I would talk about this subject, and even if no one ever listened, then it's a good podcast, right?
Yeah.
Because then we can do that. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Subject matter really short, because, when I was starting my season 3 and 4, I actually wondered, what can I do? Like, shall I go and interview freelancing or whatever it is? And then I, kind of stick in my mind, like, we'll interview podcasters itself, like how they started and everything. I mean, like, every single day podcast will obviously come up, and I may not run out of content. So yeah, I think that sort of an idea would be like nice, and it's going so well so far. So, wow. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. It's really been an awesome conversation. Like, it really be like, it's not easy for me to find someone to talk about Backstreet Boys. It's not. I mean, like, I love those guys, and for me, it's, you hear people always like, like some sort of my native language stuff, but I love English songs. I don't know why. I mean, like, I'm not hate over my native language. It's just that I just love that English pop and everything and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's one of the things. And guys, we have talked about a lot of things in this podcast, like, like musics and everything and stuff. And one of the things I want to say is that music, when it comes to podcasting or life or anything, it will blow up. It will blow up your mind. So just give it this listen to a podcast, and definitely you should enjoy it. And Mr. Jackson, if someone wants to find your podcast or anything of your work, where should they go? Just give us some links.
Yeah. So Set Lusting Bruce, or if you do a search for Bruce Springsteen podcast, I will come up. There's 3 or 4 of us. There's 3 or 4 other Springsteen podcasts, believe it or not. But on Twitter, I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. The show is at Set Lusting Bruce. If you do, and it's Set, S-E-T, Lusting, L-U-S-T-I-N-G, Bruce. You can search and you can find our website, and you will find our episodes. Please go check them out. And please, send me a Twitter. My email address is setlustingbruce@gmail.com. I would love to hear from anyone that says, I enjoyed your discussion with Jeffrey. I'm passionate about, Indian music. I love Bollywood. And if they want to come to me and share their passion and about that, that would be great. I love talking to people about what they love. And I do hope they listen to the podcast. I hope they let me know what they like. And if they don't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why, and tell me what I could do better. Okay? Because, we're all just trying to get through the best we can.
Yeah, exactly. And even the word you said, when you said Bollywood, it kind of gave me goosebumps, because I didn't actually know when you said some of that. So yeah, I think that really means a lot. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
And guys, so I've given a link in everything in the description, like you said, and there are timestamps also for the things we have discussed, so you can go and check that out. And thanks so much, Mr. Jackson, for coming out to the show. And I'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Goodbye.
Bye.